And happy Wednesday to the world out there. And gentlemen, welcome to season 5.
Hey.
Hey.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do a season.
It's been a while.
It has.
We're in April. We haven't had a chance to really talk about any Seahawks football since end of the season. That's about 3 months.
It's been a weird while, let's be honest.
A lot of weird things have happened in that time.
Oh yeah, I mean, like some movies got pushed back. That was weird.
Tony chiming in on the chat. What's up, Tony? How you doing? Thank you for checking us out. Yeah, gentlemen, lots of things to talk about. Some of them related to the football, and some of them related to the Seahawks, and some of them related to everything. But we're here, season 5. This is a Hawkscast podcast. With me, as always, we got Zeb and Ross, and I am Sam. Gentlemen, there's all kinds of things going on, all kinds of Seahawks going on. One of the biggest news is Russell Wilson's popping out another baby with Ciara. They're going to have a boy. I don't know if you saw that. They did one of those gender reveal parties.
Those are always fun. Those are always a real good time.
Yeah.
When did that become a thing?
You know, I had my first kid 2010, so we're talking about 10 years ago, and we never even thought of doing that.
I'd never even heard of it until like kind of recently.
I mean, I think probably the rise of social media, right? Like, otherwise, who's watching?
It feels a little like self-centered to me.
Oh, it's super self-centered. Tony said 3 years ago, so maybe 5.
Nailed it.
I would not say that that's a bad estimated number. I would say that seems about right.
So post Batman trilogy.
Yeah,
somewhere.
Yeah.
Like I went to a gender reveal party and I was the only guy not wearing pants. I didn't get it.
What kind of party where you don't wear pants?
It was a gender reveal. I'm like
revealing his gender.
Reveal parties and like people are like, dude, put your pants on. I'm like, you named the party. I didn't get it.
Yeah. But along with the Russell Wilson Ciara baby news, lots of other things are going on. Not only are there things impacting the sport, the team, and us, we're doing our best. This podcast has always been a social distancing podcast.
Yeah, we are so ahead of the curve.
We are pioneers in social distancing. I don't know anyone else that does it as well as we do.
We're good.
Yeah,
in the same city or continent sometimes.
No. Yeah, we have done one time where we've all been in the same location.
And I came away with a bad case of cooties, so
yeah, that was an outlier.
I'm like, no, only social distancing from now on.
That was the exception that proved the rule.
Exactly.
That is true. Boy Scout chiming in on the chat. How's it going, dude? But yeah, I mean, we got a whole bunch of stuff. This is a good chance for us to catch up. We're going to talk about all the things. The 2020 NFL season is officially back, which means we see the return of free agency, NFL trades, preparing for the NFL draft. And this is all happening while the country and the world is dealing with the pandemic. What's the impact of COVID-19 to the NFL and the Seattle Seahawks? This is the Hawkscast podcast, and we're going to find out. Real quick, how are you guys doing? How is this pandemic treating you? We talked about it a little bit off air before we started, but what would you like to let people know how you're doing and kind of what the impact you see in your daily life before we get into it?
Yeah, Zeb, tell us.
Well, I'll tell you what, it comes down to a couple of main things. A little bit less money coming in and a little bit more free time that I'm dedicating almost primarily to sleeping.
Good use of time, good use of resources.
Yeah. Catch up on sleep, man.
Exactly.
I bet you've been running a sleep deficit for like years, and so,
Just putting it back into the positive, trying to get you back to zero.
I'm a professional sleeper inner, I'll tell you that much. So,
can I get an internship?
It's a sleep study. You just cuddle with Zeb all night.
I get warm. I run a little warm.
Ross, how about you? How are you dealing? What would you like to share with the people out there?
The experience in Tokyo is quite different, probably from over there. I mean, as I said offline, we can't properly lock down, and it really hasn't been necessary up to now. And even now, now that we're officially in our state of emergency, we're not getting exponential numbers, but we're now, several days in a row of over 100 new cases or 150 new cases. But I don't know. It's weird. It's been a struggle here because normally Japan comes together quite well in times of emergency, but this is such a different type that it's been hard for both the government and for people to kind of get a handle. And just by chance, Japanese law is not really well equipped. As a reaction to World War II, and the severe fascism and whatever you want to call it that was in place at the time, like Japanese laws really restrict what the government can do. Like even now, where we're under sort of a semi-lockdown for some types of companies, officially how it's worded is like the government strongly urges your company to shut down, and that's the best they can do. So we're never going to go full on lockdown, but we've benefited from some cultural and health regulations that are always in place here. They've sort of mitigated things, and we've got effective, communication, or at least of information sometimes. Yeah. So
that's crazy.
It's weird over here a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So my company, I've been working from home for 6 weeks. And working from home it's small benefits, but mostly I just get bored being at home. I like being able to go outside. I like riding a car. I like taking a train, a bus, going to work, seeing my coworkers, seeing my friends. So, it's reached its point. The kids and the wife, they're also at home because school's canceled for the rest of the year. So that's been a really interesting ride. I think for the most part, we're all handling it as well as could be expected, but yeah, there's been some cracks here and there of like, I need to go for a walk, I need to go to bed early, I need no one to talk to me for a little bit, I need to just like find a new release. But yeah, it's been weird, and we're all regular people. Like I wonder how this is impacting like a crazy athlete like Russell Wilson who's used to working out. Do you have all of the facilities at your house? He probably does, which is easy for him. But think about the guy that's like on a rookie contract trying to make a team.
Did you just see that the NFL just gave... The NFL has now created an allowance. Every NFL player or like potential player, whatever, gets $1,500.
Yep, for workout equipment. So, I mean, yeah. I think it's cool that the NFL is doing something. Charles Robinson on Twitter, I think he's with Yahoo. He talked about a lot of the off season. So Ross, I know that's something, I saw that as well. There's a couple things I don't want to talk about, stuff that he said, but yeah, it's interesting because $1,500, that's a good amount of money to buy some workout equipment. I mean, you can definitely get a treadmill, you can get an elliptical, you can get some weights, but
you don't want to get one of those all-in-one deals that are on TV at 3:00 in the morning.
A Bowflex. The Bowflex.
Yeah. Because I actually feel like the top end equipment, I feel like $1,500 doesn't go that far, does it?
Probably not.
Yeah. I don't think you can get a full workout set for that.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. I haven't lived in the US for a long time. I don't know the prices right now, but I don't think you can get top end equipment like a full set that you'd need for like a lineman for that amount.
Right. For the amount of weights and amount of like conditioning you'd expect to put this equipment through for a multi-billion-dollar business, it's probably not going to be enough, especially for someone that's like made some camp, maybe was on a practice squad all year long. Like, it's not going to get them very far, which is going to be kind of crazy to think about.
Who's that guy who makes the exercise videos? Billy what? Billy Barnes? Billy Baines?
I know who you're talking about, but I can't remember his last name.
And he makes those, and it has like those resistance bands. Yeah. You can get a lot of resistance bands for $1,500, but I tell you, like, I broke those. So I bought those one time.
Billy Blank's
Big Boot Camp. Yes, I bought that. I had him.
Blanks.
I took them. I took those resistance bands and the videos with me to like Shanghai, and I used it for 10 minutes, and they broke. Don't buy it.
Yes.
Don't spend your $1,500 on Billy Blanks.
Yeah.
Sorry. The anti shout out.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy, but let's kind of jump into it. So, Zeb, topic number one, we're just going to jump into just like the offseason, talk about football again. Um, outside of this pandemic, because we'll talk about that later, has this been a typical offseason for the Seahawks and their front office in 2020?
I don't know. It's so hard to it just feels weird, so it's hard to like really get a good gauge on it. I feel like they've been like when you actually look at the list of guys that they've brought in, it's they've been fairly active. So I don't, I think you pay closest attention to the big signings, and there hasn't been any big signings necessarily. Lots of little deals here and there. Lots of OLine. I feel like we're going to be going into the season with a pretty deep OLine. Whether that ends up being good or bad, obviously remains to be seen. But I think when it comes to just the NFL offseason in general, the fact that they're kind of just trudging ahead and pushing forward has been one of the few kind of bright spots, or like the elements of normalcy to all this. So I'm definitely glad that things have kind of kept moving for the NFL. I'm actually whatever. This is obviously not that important, but I'm glad that this whole thing has happened so far during the off season. If I was a huge basketball or baseball fan, I'd probably be really bummed right now.
Seriously.
Ross, what about you? I know you're obviously dealing with your own world, but have you kind of had a chance to kind of look at what the Seahawks are doing and kind of say like, yeah, that looks about right. That's what they're going to do, whether I want them to or not?
It mostly feels like how they approach things. Like you can see where they've identified problems they have. They have one that they probably want to go through the draft. They figure out the best way to figure is mostly the draft. And then one they've clearly figured out, like they're going to sign 1,000 people and see what sticks, right? I mean, we've got 64 signed people to the roster right now, and 16 of them are on the offensive line. So, and they've signed what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They've signed 6, I think, offensive linemen.
Yeah, they just brought back Mike Upati in the last couple of days, so he signed a 1-year deal.
So, I mean, it feels typical to me. Like, normally they have, like, a position they want to address, and they sign a bunch of people at that, and then they look for pretty smart deals or bargains or sort of money ball stuff. Greg Olsen is a good, they signed him. That was, I think, the very first signing they had, and that's if he's healthy and can contribute, that's a great signing for the money. Just 1 year, $7 million. Brought back Luke Wilson and Jacob Hollister. So, I don't know, like, it feels typical. You can definitely see when they did their end of year evaluations or whatever, like how they were thinking, right? And like clearly they want Clowney, but that's been a thing. But I think even though people are saying now Clowney has almost no chance of coming back, I think in a weird way Mike Upati, and we'll talk about this later in the podcast, but I think the Mike Upati signing actually shines a light that they might be closer to getting Clowney to come back, if that makes sense. But it doesn't, but I'll explain myself later on.
No. I think I know where you're going. But yeah, it's really interesting. This offseason, I feel like outside of the pandemic, this was as typical of a Seahawks offseason as you could expect. The surprise, I think, for me was the fact that Jarran Reed signed. All of these deals are all 1 and 2 year deals. Jarran Reed obviously got the biggest contract, a 2-year, $23 million. For a guy who had 10.5 sacks 2 years ago, that's not a lot of money, especially from the defensive tackle line. I mean, you would expect someone to get almost Aaron Dalton money if they could continually put up those kind of numbers, which hasn't. But
yeah, it's the consistency,
right? But I think what's interesting is you look at what they're doing. Like if you look at all the additions that they've made to this roster, they've brought back a bunch of tight ends. So they brought back 2 of their tight ends from last year, and they brought in Greg Olsen. So 3 tight ends re-signed, 6 offensive linemen, re-signed 1 tight end, 1 wide receiver in David Moore with a tender. Philip Dorsett is a new wide receiver that they brought in. Nico Thorpe, special teams ace, got brought back, and then you add basically all people that have always at one point been a Seahawk: Bruce Irvin, Benson Mayowa, Brandon Jackson, and Jarran Reed. So you're not adding a lot of new blood to the team, especially on the offense, except for the offensive line. But they're not making big splashes. They're not in that first wave of free agents. They're not really in that second wave. They're kind of just grabbing people that are like, to some degree, almost journeymen, or people that are like, oh, wow, like they got him for that much? Oh, well, how come no one else offered him that money? But then there's a lot of other guys that you're saying like, oh, how come Seahawks wouldn't just pony up instead of signing 6 offensive linemen? Why not just throw like half of that money and you could have signed Brian Bulaga, who is obviously way older than everyone else they've signed. So it's kind of it's very typical, I think. A very, very prototypical John and Pete offseason so far.
We've even got, Greg Olsen's sort of like, there's typically one guy that you're like, wow, if this was 5 years ago, that'd be like a monster signing, right?
Yeah.
So Greg Olsen fills that role. So we've got that covered. Wow, man. It's like when watching some of Tony's friends draft in the fantasy league, where like they're drafting for 3 or 4 years ago. But it becomes a bargain if they can find something in the tank,
I think the most interesting thing is the fact that they signed Chance Womack. So Chance Womack is an offensive lineman from the Philadelphia Eagles. We don't know what his signing was, but he's the 7th first-round pick from the 2013 draft that the Seahawks have signed. So we're 7 years beyond the 2013 draft, and he's another player that the Seahawks have had on their roster. Almost a quarter of that draft. That does not
speak well to that year's first round.
Yeah, we're Luke Jokel, Deion Jordan, Ziggy Ansah, Barkevius Mingo, Chance Warmack, DJ Fluker, and Sheldon Richardson. 2 of those guys I thought were pretty solid, but everyone else kind of like, meh.
Meh?
Yeah.
Deion Jordan kept teasing, right? I just felt like he was just about to get there. He was just about there.
Yeah. But yeah, it's one of those things that, whether it was due to injury or just not being able to be available, that definitely like hurt chances. I do want to ask real quick, Seahawks did not retain Jermaine Ifedi. He signs a 1-year vet minimum deal with Chicago.
Like $7 or something.
So
crazy.
Getting like a minimum wage, dude. They're just paying him by the hour, I swear to God.
Who knows if he's going to break opening day roster if there is one with him,
Oh, it's so bad. Like how mad was he that they didn't tender him here, that he left for that much? Because I'm sure Seattle would have retained him for that much.
Oh yeah. But at that point, if you're him, if you have the chance to stay with the team and make a vet deal or go to a new team, you probably want to start over, right?
If you believe in yourself and you just think like, maybe he just thinks that he wasn't appreciated, or he feels like he wasn't properly evaluated, or he feels like if like the left guard was better, that he would be a better. If the right guard was a better guard, he would show up as better as a tackle.
Right.
And so he's sort of making that sort of investment, because otherwise, like, I don't know why you would go somewhere else to make $12.50 an hour plus like access to a 1977 Ford Pinto for the company car. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
Because that's what you really got, right?
Yeah. Real quick, Zeb, Ross, do you think Ifedi was a bust?
Yeah, sure. We I guess we got like probably as much or more out of him than we should have. So
no. so that would be no. I personally don't think he's a bust. I don't think like just because you're drafted high, you're necessarily somebody the team wants to always sign you to a second contract. And if they don't, that doesn't mean he had some issues. He developed. He was serviceable. We got 5 years out of him, and he moved on. I wish he'd signed for more, so at least we get something in compensation drop. But whatever. I don't think it's a bust. I don't think surely you're hoping for, but if you get 5 years out of somebody, regardless of the draft position, and they play it as a starter, it's hard to call you a bust.
Tony wants to call him a turnstile. I don't know if that's in the bust world, but I'm with you, Russ. I think it's hard to argue a guy that played for as long as he did, who they obviously tried to replace year after year, but never could. I think that's something. Where on the flip side,
you're hoping for more, of course, but just because you don't all hopes like a bust is like somebody who doesn't even fulfill the minimums to me, right? Can't get on the field, can't, never contributes really,
Right.
and consistently. Again, he didn't fulfill our hopes and dreams, but he stayed on the field, and like you said, couldn't get him off the field with nobody else. So, drafting's hard. Putting a roster together is hard.
Now here's the interesting thing. Here's the interesting thing. So the Jets signed our former left tackle, our former backup left tackle, to a 3-year, multi-million-dollar contract. The Seahawks are going to get a good compensatory pick out of him. George Fant, former basketball player. What's your take on that? Maybe let's actually, let's save that. We'll save that for the another topic, because it's really interesting off the counter of Jermaine Ifedi. But final thoughts about the offseason before we move on to topic number 2.
I mean, the draft. I think this is going to be one of the most interesting. I mean, how is this going to work? Have they even? I know everything's supposed to be remote, and they're going to be everybody's at their houses live video chatting with each other. I think it's going to be crazy, and it's probably going to be riddled with issues and problems, and I think it's going to be a dumpster fire. But I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah,
I don't know, dude. I do like 6 drafts a year online.
No problem, right?
All right. Well, let's move on to topic number 2. Ross, this topic is specifically for you because this has always been a topic that you have held in your heart. I know it's really important because sometime in this offseason, Russell Wilson actually made a vocal request to get superstars and bring him to this team. So, question for topic number 2 is: can you pay your quarterback $35 million a year and find superstars in free agency?
It makes it hard. I mean, it all depends. And that's the thing. It's all condition. When I dumb down my argument, it's always that if you pay that much, then you can't, right? But the nuanced argument is what it really means is you have to be drafting out of your mind. If you actually draft 5, 6, 7 people over a span of 2 years, even late in your draft, that end up being above average players, then you can. I mean, and that was true of a couple teams recently. Like there were the counter arguments to me in the playoffs, but I was just like, yeah, but if you nail every single pick in your draft, you can. It's just a lot of pressure on you. But the Seahawks haven't. So we've had to sign how many people? Where's that list? I mean, we've signed quite a few people, free agents, and when you're paying free agents, that you don't have that money to all combine into one amazing player. So yeah, I mean, look, if we look at Greg Olsen was 7, Finney's 8 over 2, that's 11, 12, 13, it's 5 there. If we had drafted our offensive line in place, so we didn't have to worry about it right now, there's $15 million probably this year, and a tight end, or if we felt we didn't need Greg Olsen, then we would have $15 million more dollars we could throw at one particular player. So yeah, I mean, it's not really a question. If Russell Wilson this year was going to make $1 million or $2 million or $4 million, if he was going to make $5 million, we'd have $30 million more right now. Then if you drafted your offensive line exactly right, if you happen to win the crapshoot, now you're at $45 million and you could sign 2 or 3 of the best players available. So yeah, Russell Wilson saying he wants us to sign superstars, but also saying I want to get my max value every single contract. Again, you can still win. I mean, yes, I concede you can still win. You can still put together a roster, but the margin of error gets smaller and smaller and smaller the more you contribute, the more you pay one particular position, right? And it's just math. And it puts a lot of pressure to do everything else right if you're going to pay $35 million right now to Russell Wilson. Now it gets a lot easier. Like the new TV deals are going to pump huge amounts of money in the next couple of years, but there's a caveat to that. Those might have to get adjusted. Like if the whole economy collapses and TV stations need to renegotiate that could become an albatross. I don't know. how that'll shake out. We're going to see how the recession goes.
Yeah, because the
Could be
salary cap is always dependent on how much revenue the NFL as a whole generates, which is part of the collective bargaining agreement.
And
So
it's gone up and up and up and up. So people think it's going to go up forever. This is now is like reminiscent of like 2008 economic bubble, but that's a different podcast. But yeah, I mean, like if right now, like, well, Russell Wilson's contract, if things continue this trend, is going to look like actually like a bargain in 2 years because I think the cap is going to go up more than expected the next couple of years. But if COVID-19 creates a global depression, which it already has, and if that affects TV deals and stuff, then like that could become an albatross even. So yeah, you know, it's hard to get superstars. Instead you get faded superstars like Greg Olsen, or you get Philip Dorsett, who was a first round pick but has never had more than like 650 yards in a season. That's our superstars. Yeah. And that's what you get. That's what you get, Russ, because you want all the money.
A magnificent bird, the albatross.
It is. Do people not use that phrase anymore? Am I talking like an old?
No.
Like an old house? Do people know what I'm saying?
I'm with you. I got you.
Okay, thank you.
Zeb, what about you? How do you handle this situation? How do you, as a fan, reconcile Russell Wilson getting paid this much and saying like, oh yeah, by the way, pay me, but also pay everyone else?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Ross mostly covered it. Like you can, if you get real creative, you can probably make one or two things happen, but you really are in a position where you kind of have to create your own superstars. You got to get your DK Metcalfs and your Chris Carsons, and you have to build your squad that way. Like you can't just go grab 2 or 3 top tier guys. There's just no way to afford it. So, right, you know, I don't think that kind of thing is even crossing Russ's mind when he's saying something like that. Of course, he wants to play with the best guys he can play with, right? And I don't think anybody is going to fault him for trying to get the most money he can out of his paydays, because that's just the way the world works. But it's not an impossibility. You can still do it. You have to be very creative, and you have to, like Ross said, draft a lot better than we have been. It would be nice to hit some of those home runs like we used to back in the day, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be the way things work for us with this front office anymore. So the Greg Olsen signing is confusing to me.
Dude, it's Greg Olsen.
He was great for fantasy in 2015, you guys.
I mean, is he?
I guarantee you, week 3, if there is a season, week 3, Tony picks him up.
Tony's straight up drafting him out of the gate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Zeb, I don't want to cut you off. Did you?
No, I mean that's it. Greg Olsen's not a superstar at this point. 10 years ago, sure. You know, even 7, 8 years ago, you could consider him probably a top 3 or 4 tight end in the league. But at this point, I don't know.
How about Nico Thorpe though? We got Nico Thorpe.
Hey, special team.
I like Nico, man. He's a high energy guy.
Ace. I think both of you guys are completely right. There's really nothing to detract. I think what you kind of have to almost rationalize is, at some point as a player, the quarterback is a unique anomaly in the fact that they are the one position that can really make or break your team. You look at like the Niners and the fact that they made it all the way to the Super Bowl, but their quarterback couldn't make the throws. They couldn't make the plays that you needed them to make, because all the pressure is on that position. And if you have a quarterback that can do that, you can go really far. Russell Wilson has constantly been praised for saying that he's doing so much with so little. He's doing it with a rookie wide receiver. He's doing it with an undersized guy playing outside in Tyler Lockett. He's playing with a banged up offensive line. He doesn't have running backs going into playoffs. And he's, making games competitive. There's obviously deficiencies that he can't make up for because he doesn't play on defense. But on the offensive side, he's doing a lot of plus things, and that's why you have to pay that role such a premium price. I think the problem with his comment of saying like I want superstars is the NFL doesn't allow superstars to hit free agency. Like, who's the last big name free agent superstar that's ever hit the market that was actually going to go to another team? 43-year-old Tom Brady, you know?
Antonio Brown, was he a free agent or was he traded?
He initially got traded and then he got cut.
So there you go.
So, but I mean, I don't know if I would say Antonio Brown was the most coveted free agent out there. And that's the thing about the NFL. The NFL doesn't allow for superstars to leave the team. You think about all the team, like Earl Thomas maybe for the Seahawks was a coveted free agent. He got huge money, played really well with Baltimore. But, you know, that's obviously a risk, and maybe Baltimore, because they have a rookie quarterback, they can allow for that kind of a payment. Richard Sherman was not a coveted free agent. He's had 2 great years in San Francisco, but got burned in the Super Bowl by a guy that obviously we knew he was going to get eventually toasted on because he just doesn't have the speed to match up. But the NFL just doesn't allow for free agents, that huge superstar free agents, to hit the open market. It's just,
well, I think also there's a lot of conservative. I mean, it's not like playing Madden, right? We don't play in a vacuum. If you're a GM, like there's even like fan backlash. Even if you think that you have to let a certain player go, sometimes it's really, really hard. That's actually what the Patriots have done really well. They've been able to cancel out all the noise.
Right.
Whereas you can see most other teams sometimes sign players that, I mean, I felt like even the Seahawks. I felt like the Seahawks when they re-signed Cam, yeah, I kind of had the idea like John Schneider's going like, I know this is not going to work out.
The head and the heart move. We talked about that. The head and the heart say 2 different things.
Yeah. I mean, you guys and I have clashed over this. Where I've said, you know what, I want Cam to go. You can't sign this dude.
No, because he was injured. But my heart says I love Cam, and he killed Vernon Davis.
And that's the thing, like. You have to have like really good PR, because if you do let these people go because of that, like fans will like so hate you and so turn on you, and that'll matter to the owner eventually sometimes. So, yeah. And you know everybody is human, except for Belichick. Yeah. So, and those things get involved, and you want Marshawn Lynch's last deal, not last year's last deal, but like the last year that he was a real player.
Dude, he scored 4 touchdowns in 3 games.
Yeah, he did, because if you give a guy 10 carries from the one, he's going to get in.
And he did it. But no, I agree with you. And I think that's also one of the things about the NFL that makes it such a great sport is teams that design themselves well can continue to be good. I mean, we're not losing guys like DeAndre Hopkins for like a 6th round pick, you know, because all of a sudden Pete Carroll like decides like he just hates a player, you know. You don't have them trading away like one of your best players and we're crippling your young quarterback who's still on a rookie contract because, oh yeah, you know what, DeAndre Hopkins, there's just something else. Oh, but you know what, we are going to sign Brandon Cooks, who only had 600 yards last year, so like almost, you know, a third of the production you got out of DeAndre Hopkins. We're just going to downgrade, and that's going to all of a sudden be better. You're not seeing that. You still have questionable moves at the Seahawks, but that dichotomy of what you're paying your quarterback and what you can do in free agency, the Seahawks continue to do what they want to do, which is maybe what makes it unsexy and not being able to find those superstars, unless we go back in time and look at those old fantasy drafts.
Dude, you're underrating Nico.
Man, I'm gonna have to add special team tackles to my fantasy league this year because that's the guy I'm going to keep in my pocket. Final thoughts on just like being able to sign free agents with the contract like that.
Let's just sign some superstars. What's the problem? What's holding us back?
Do you remember that? I think it was a TikTok video or something a few months back where there was a student from California. She said literally, well, like, I don't understand. If you're homeless, just like buy a house.
Let them eat cake.
Dude.
Yeah, for real.
Dude, just sign some superstars.
Just sign them.
Just sign them.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Moving on to topic number 3, the Hawkscast Corner. So this is a tweet from Austin Slater on Twitter, and he wants to know, First, ring push-ups or regular push-ups, and the second question is, what's up with the offensive line? Zeb, I don't know the last time I've done a push-up, like intentionally. I don't even know what a ring push-up is, but would you do regular push-ups or ring push-ups?
I'm going to answer Austin's question by posing a question of my own. What's a push-up?
So do you know like the rings gymnastics like they hang off of?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can get just the ring part and you can hold those on the ground and like balance on them and you can do push-ups on those.
Wait, like actually with the rings, like
you're holding the rings in your hand and then you put the rings on the floor and then you can do push-ups on those.
And you're like balancing the rings up while you're doing a push-up into the ground?
Yeah, right. There's another version of this where I've seen rings sort of like okay, so the rings are just like in gymnastics. They're attached to like the rope kind of thing that goes to the ceiling, but those go all the way almost to the floor. So then you can hold them the same way. You can hold the bottom part of the ring and hold those straight down, and then you do a push-up on that. Come on,
that's
guys.
too much effort for me.
Dude, you play flag football, right?
Play
sounds like
football, but
sounds like an easy way to hurt your wrists.
Yeah.
It's really good for your arms, apparently. And then there's some debate. Some people say that when you're doing them this way, it doesn't build your chest. Like if you do a normal floor push-up, you're going to almost exclusively work your chest, right? I mean, you're getting some arm work, but it's a lot on the chest and the inner arms, whatever. But I'm not an Austin guy, so I'm not as versed in these things. But anyway, there's some discussion, apparently, like ring push-ups maybe work your arms much more, but maybe you don't get as much benefit in the chest. But they seem to be more actually like sort of efficient for building muscle mass.
Then ring push-ups, easy.
The ring push, yeah. Well, that's the thing though. But if you're trying to, it depends on what your goal is, right? Everything in the athletic sports building muscle training thing, and I think Austin would speak to this. It all depends on what your actual goal is. What do you want to look like? What do you want to work on?
I know 3 absolute truths. One of them is pay your quarterback. The second one is find superstars in free agency, and the third one is do ring push-ups.
Yes.
That's 3 highlights. I got you.
Here's what I think we're doing with our O-line.
Use more calories in your
calories in, calories out.
Yes.
I think that's what we're doing with our O-line right now. We're going calories in, calories out.
Are we just doing like are we gonna just change this over to like sort of a dietary fitness podcast?
Nah, I'm not qualified for that podcast.
Yeah, but Austin would be on every week then. No, but it's a good question though. Ring push-ups versus, next week we'll discuss floor exercise or
how about this? Ring pops or push-up pops?
I don't know what that means. Wait, is a ring push-up like that candy when you're a kid that looks like a ring?
Yes.
Like that giant sort of almost like a giant ruby shaped now and later?
That's the one. It's just a hard candy on a ring shaped like a gem, like a precious gem. But a push-up pop, that's like frozen yogurt in a cardboard tube with Fred Flintstone's face printed on the outside of it. So
ring pops
you decide.
I'm gonna go with that because like those ring pops, those I don't think I ever finished one.
Do we want to talk O-line here?
Oh, sure.
Let's talk O-line.
That's your question.
What's going on with our O-line, I believe, is the question that was posed. Well, it appears that we're having some movement across our O-line this offseason. And we've decided to go out there and just gather men for the O-line room, and we're going to probably just let them fight it out and see who gets those starting spots, right?
Okay, what does the signing of Upati mean to you? I mean, not as a person. I mean, like, what do you think it means for the team?
I think it's his job to lose.
Left guard?
Yeah, I would imagine, unless one of these other guys is better fit for that spot. But Upati was pretty fantastic in the run game last year, pulling and creating them big old holes.
Right. He started 15 games last year, and that kind of blew my mind because in my impression, he only started like 12 or 13. I didn't realize he had only started one. Or he only missed one, rather.
He had a couple games where he like came in and out, so he wasn't like these weren't like 15 clear starts, and
right.
you know, what's interesting is this offensive line. You still have your left tackle, Dwayne Brown. Uh, Fluker is your right guard. Britt played half a year. He hasn't been cut. He's still in his last year. Joey Hunt's been brought back, so you've got your centers from last year. You are replacing Ifedi for sure because his right tackle spots open up.
He gone.
So you signed 6 linemen. 2 of them are from the
And
team
there's a
before
bunch
him.
of there's also a bunch of people who didn't play last year that are still around, like Phil Haynes.
Phil Haynes, who got some playing time. Jordan Simmons got re-signed as well.
DeMarco.
Jamarco Jones is back, who I thought looked pretty good until he got hurt in the preseason. So
I think Jordan Roos is on the roster,
Jordan
man.
Roos is also, he got signed to the active roster, I believe. So you've got a bunch of bodies. But
Yeah, I
if
think the
those
name of the
bodies are
game here
good-
is competition.
Yeah, I think so. Can I have the floor for a second?
Take it. It's yours.
So with you, before you potty signed, I was assuming that BJ Finney had sort of like the lead on the left guard position. But with you potty coming back, and I agree with Sammy that he's going to basically start unless he messes up. But they paid Finney a lot. Like Finney's getting something like, I think it's 8. Yeah, I mean he's getting a lot of money, and that's a lot. It's too much money to just like sit on the bench. So my idea now is that Finney is maybe our new center because he can play center as well.
That's interesting.
With the idea that Britt is now his $11.4 million is now added to the pot we can use if we want to sign Clowney or if we want to fulfill all of Russell Wilson's dreams and get a star.
Yeah.
If there's anything to spend that money on. And then again, we have these other things like Dwayne Brown is again, of course, going to be the left tackle, but he's not the healthiest dude in the world. So you have to have somebody who's decent as a backup. Left guard, we said, is Upati. Then everybody else competes. That would be Finney at center. I agree with Fluker at right guard. And then it looks like to me Shell is going to be the right tackle because you don't pay that dude that much money either.
We lose George Fant, we bring Brandon Shell.
Well, see, Fant is going to be
left side. I know. I'm just kidding.
No, I was just going to say, but Fant's like his sort of like jumbo tight end role is going to be that I don't know how to pronounce his name.
Oguhi.
Cedric is going to be that guy, right?
Yeah, he looks like that guy.
And his contract is almost exactly the same as what Fant's was last year as well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like clearly like that's what they budget for that sort of role. So I think basically now what you're talking about is like depth at left tackle because you don't think you're going to get 16 games out of Dwayne Brown. You have to have sort of your swing tackle, which to me I think Jamarco Jones maybe has sort of the edge there, right?
It seems like he's got the pedigree for it, right?
Right. And so then, like you guys said, is after that it's like massive competition for these other things, like because everybody else is like their contract's affordable, and if they don't start, they don't start. If they don't make the team, they don't make the team. But I think that's where we're at, and that's why I think when it gets to the draft, I think a lot of Seahawks Twitter is going to be mad because we're not going to draft in the first, second, or third round anybody, right?
Maybe some superstars.
Yeah, I really don't see them spending an offensive line draft unless it's like Jermaine Ifedi Redux, like a guy that everyone says, "Oh, you could have got him in the second and third round. Why'd you spend a first round on him?"
There is a caveat though that all these people are signed for like 2 years or less, and if they decide they want some continuity and long-term stability, maybe they do that. Because if for example, that's the thing with like these short-term free agency signings, if they do work out, but you signed it 2 years only to start with, but I mean, if you prove yourself a genius and like you get more value out of that than you were, then after 2 years, they've sort of got you by the short and curlies because now you're dependent on them, you need them, and they can get a lot. So if they decide they want to develop talent, I can still see them going in the draft, but I think it's going to be 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, not first, second, third. Also, Solari, apparently, like the highest he's ever drafted an offensive lineman is like 70th overall, third round.
Yeah.
So, showing a little bit of my research off.
Nice. Well done. Very informative. So to Austin's first question, I don't do push-ups, so I don't really care. Whatever you want, do what feels good.
You baby
man.
boy.
The offensive line, I think this goes back into like, the Seahawks' general philosophy is that offensive linemen and what they want to do and how hard it is maybe to play with Russell Wilson. Maybe that's like an element that is just really hard to like quantify when building a roster, because how do you train an offensive lineman? It's like, all right, so you're going to pass block for like 1.5, 2.5 seconds, but never go beyond like 2.5 yards because Russell Wilson might run, or he might just be running around backwards. Just find someone in front of you and just push him around and don't get a flag. Like I'm not really sure how to explain that as a pass blocking concept with Russell Wilson.
I mean, can I interrupt just for 1 second?
No, please.
Quick hypothesis is if you look at historically how they treat the offensive line, and we know that despite what people think, they actually do moneyball things. I think what Seattle's doing is that they think if you put a huge amount of money into the offensive line and get like a top-rated line versus a medium-rated line, the difference in what happens per game, say you have got a great offensive line, so you only allow 1 sack a game, and you have as opposed to a mediocre offensive, 3 sacks a game. Now that's only a difference of 2 plays, and then Russell Wilson as the mitigating factor takes away one of those sometimes, and so I feel like for the money they can save off of 5 different positions across the line, sometimes they obviously they clearly value left tackle more and center, but if the other 3 positions, they think the money they can save will make a difference and used other places, as opposed to saving yourself 1.5 plays a game. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and again, it's that whole Moneyball aspect, and it's something that I think Ross, you and I, we really agree with, and maybe the way that we apply it and how the team applies it, that's always going to be just kind of matter of opinion. But I think there is definitely an element in how they are trying to build this offensive line, and it's knowing that you cannot just throw massive amounts of money at the offensive line because there's so many moving parts. If we could take the week 1 roster and take that team into the playoffs, I would have given us the best odds to make it to the Super Bowl. But that's not what happened. We had so many people injured. We had so many people that were saying, like, you know what, I'm only going to play because it's the playoffs. I'm only going to play because there's no games after this. If you don't have that worry with your offensive line and with your running backs and other key positions, who knows how far that team could have gone. And I think this is a decision to say, like, you know what? We were so banged up and we were so limited on some of our roster moves. We are going to overcompensate for that, which I think is a natural tendency. But because every one of these free agents and retention deals on the offensive line are all like 1 and 2 year deals, what it means is that they're not necessarily committed to any of these people. None of our offensive linemen that started last year are signed for next year. That's like another way to look at it. No one that started for the Seahawks in 2019 is scheduled to play for the Seahawks in 2021 if that's like the next time they see a contract. Dwayne Brown's not, Justin Britt's not, DJ Fluker is not. Those are the 3 guys that are signed for this year that started last year and we know are going to be there again. They're not signed for 2021. So this is a deal. This is a move that Seahawks understand. Like, we still need to build depth. We need to have people that are ready. If that makes it work, I believe they can do it. I'm not saying that like I have the strongest faith, but it's not something that they haven't been able to do before, right?
Gotta say that is sort of an argument for them maybe taking somebody in the draft, even though they have all these people. Because if you want continuity, you better start getting some.
But they've got 5 guys on their roster that have had starting and playing time in the past 2 years that are still signed, and maybe they feel that this is their chance for one of those guys to step up.
Maybe Phil Haynes takes the job. Maybe he just like becomes the man.
Yeah, and I also don't think that if you were in a position, and we talked about this in topic 1, but George Fant, great story. I wouldn't have paid him that much money.
It's not that much. It's not a crazy amount of. It's like what it's hard to say.
It's a 3-year, $30 million contract.
Right, but that's that. I mean, that's true. It is a lot, but
But that's not bad for a starter. I mean, that's a very reasonable amount of money. It's not out of this world.
and it's actually one more reason the Seahawks kind of are, well, in my biased opinion, smart with how they play. They if you go in to say we're sort of like a run first or we're a balanced team, then you actually get away with it. Because, for example, our new right tackle, for example, if it's Brandon Shell, he's $11 million for 2 years. Fluke is something like $2 million a year. Upati just resigned, and he's going to be less than $3 million a year. Like the left tackle that goes to a conventional team that's going to throw a lot, he's going to get $10 million, even though like he was a moving tight end last year, essentially, or moving tackle.
Yeah.
So we we're paying people who even are going to be starters peanuts compared to some other teams. In some cases, the certain positions, because you get to pay a lot less if you're getting a road grader, because the NFL doesn't value the run game now.
Which again, it's an advantage that I think that Pete and John take full advantage of, and that's the advantage that they have over other teams.
Yeah,
at a cost, though. I mean, I want to be fair. I mean, it comes at a cost, right?
Yeah, it does. I mean, but like, remember when Steve Hutchinson left and we all traumatized, and that was for a total of like $7 or $7.5 million a year. That was how many years ago? But Upati, who's supposed to be a good left guard, if you only need to run, he just signed for less than 3 years later, right? So there, I mean, that's $4 million, $5 million, $10 million, $8 million you could spend somewhere else.
Yeah, yeah.
For example, your quarterback at 35.
Yeah.
Final thoughts on the offensive line.
Do a good job, guys, please.
I like the approach. Hopefully it works out.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about topic number 4, and this is kind of the heavy hitter for the day. And Ross, I'm gonna open it up with you. Has the COVID-19 pandemic changed the NFL for the 2020 season? What are we going to see?
We're going to see a weird, even more darts at the kind of draft where people don't have as much information. But I don't know. I think what's going to happen with draft is it's going to be a lot more tape based, right? I mean, you're just going to. So I think actually, conversely, it might end up being a better draft for some teams. I think they're going to surprise themselves and it might have a long term effect. People are going to have to trust what they saw on film a lot more than the individual workouts and all that other stuff that happens. They actually have to trust their eyes and what they saw them do on the playing field. After that, man, it's going to affect who you can sign and who you can't sign. Players who were injured at the end of last year kind of are getting screwed, and that might be what's going on with Clowney because nobody can get to you and to see you. People are going to – I think there's going to be a lot more Seahawks. You're seeing a lot more short-term contracts because you're going to be hesitant to marry yourself to somebody if it's – oh, man, there's so many things. There may not be a season this year, so to be honest. And I'm interested to think like how that affects who you draft and how you draft. And you're going to probably choose more polished players because you're not going to be able to have an off-season program this year if there is a season. I don't know, man. There's so many ramifications I haven't even thought through. If I was a GM, you'd have to like. He's probably the only person who's having to work more right now for Amazon because you figure this all out, right? Like for this year, if there is going to be a season, you have to figure at some level your program is going to be truncated, but also there may not be a season at all. So how do you work you with the contracts? Do you make them if there isn't a season this year? It just starts with and finally, the last thing to consider is: are they going to, since it's such a multi-billion-dollar industry now, is it worth it? And could you get the players agree to essentially play in what's the term they're throwing away now? Using right now. Basically, you can put teams essentially quarantined together, right? In sort of like a dome. And you practice in this dome and you live in this dome in sort of dormitories. And then other teams get moved over to you in sort of quarantined airplanes and move and you play games in a vacuum. And you play in front of no fans and for TV. Would people agree to it? I mean, they'd have to be away from their families 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
But for billions of dollars, maybe it's worth it. If you tell the players, like, we're just suspending the season so you don't get paid, or you can play, but you have to live inside a bubble, essentially, would you do it? What a great social experiment.
Yeah. Zeb, what about you? How do you think this is going to impact what we potentially see in 2020 for football?
I mean, yeah, it could go as far as there not even being a season. I mean, I think football, of all the major professional sports, is the one that requires the most to happen to be ready when the season starts, like physically, mentally, emotionally. These mini camps that they have to do, like, you know, these guys that are about to be drafted here in the next, what is it, less than 2 weeks away, right?
No, 1 week. We're
yeah.
Draft is next Thursday.
Those guys are used to hopping on a plane and flying over to the team facility and having a get together, you know, and getting out there and meeting guys, and that's not going to happen. Mini camps and OTAs, and, you know, even like these last few years, how we've seen like Russell will take the receivers somewhere and they'll get together and they'll hang out. Those kind of things are probably not going to be able to happen for a while still. And I think that could have a very big impact if we do actually have a season. I think it could have an impact on the quality of play, the health of the guys playing. I really do believe that one of the big things about professional sports, and I'll even extend it to things like professional wrestling, without a crowd, without an audience, I think that's part of the spectacle. Is it not? Like, that's part of what makes the atmosphere what it is, part of what makes the events enjoyable and exciting. Football, I'll watch football with no crowd in the stadium. I'll watch it, but it's going to take something away from the game, in my opinion. So I think whatever ends up happening, however they end up doing this, it's going to be different and it's going to be weird, and it probably ultimately won't be as good no matter which direction they go, unless somehow they're miraculously able to make it, you know, feel as normal as possible.
Yeah. I think
pumping the crowd noise. You're allowed to.
I think this is something that no one could really anticipate. You see what has happened to the NBA. They were in the middle of their season and it's just postponed indefinitely. You had baseball that was actually supposed to be like week 3 or 4 of Major League Baseball, and they haven't even been able to finish training camp. There's so many sports that are impacted by this.
Tiny, small, real. Like, I'm not a big baseball guy. It's something I just use to fill my off season. But, like, MLB forgot to cancel their pre-timed tweets. And actually, I felt a little sad. And all those, like, today's opening day tweets came out on my phone. I felt a little sad. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I have a bunch of friends that are, like, diehard baseball fans. And I kind of feel like, I don't want to say pity, but I definitely feel bad for them. I mean, I pity the fact that they're baseball fans because I don't like the sport, but I feel bad if anyone has something that they love and cherish and then they don't have it. Like, I would feel bad for anyone, obviously within reason. But I just don't know how this is going to impact so many of the things, especially in the NFL. Charles Robinson, we talked a little bit about how he said that they are giving every player a stipend to do workouts. So what they've said, according to the Players Union and the NFL, teams can start doing virtual workouts to earn like bonus checks. They're not going to resume any in-house work, so all facilities are closed. OTAs, any kind of training camp is basically locked out until all 50 states have removed lockdown restrictions. So even if a state like Alaska or Hawaii that does not have an NFL team, if they have a lockdown, potentially that could stop the NFL from coming back. You add the fact that this is something that both the Players Union and the NFL has looked at. I think they're taking it pretty seriously, which I commend them for doing that. I just don't know what is a reasonable timeline for them to try and come back. If they came back and said, hey, we're going to do a short season, we're going to play 8 games instead of 16, we're not going to have a bye, what we're going to do is we're going to play just NFC is just going to play NFC, you're not going to play interconference, and you're only going to play your NFC teams want, your division rivals wants. Whatever that ends up being, it's going to be weird. It's going to be messy, and it's going to like drive a lot of people crazy. I don't know how I would feel if the NFL said, "Hey, we're going to cut our things down and we're going to see what happens and roll the dice, and we're going to play a weird playoff system, or we're going to try and copy as much as we can." I think it's really going to impact people, and it's going to really drive some people away, because sports, football, NFL, it's an escape. People want to escape from their day to day, and now the world has impacted something that they use to escape. Tom Legit on chat, he says football must proceed. Heck it. I wish I could be with you, but I'm just not. I logically, I just don't know how they're going to have it done. I don't know how they can do it.
Can you read that again? I didn't hear that.
Football must proceed. He said, heck it. I think he's trying to be PC for us. But it's, I mean, for Ross and I, the start of the NFL draft, this podcast, that's a countdown to us being able to hang out in the summer. A couple months we'd go to training camp. It's something we've done for years and years and years.
We're supposed to be over there in a couple months. That's like,
and it's put a lot of casting doubts on what's going to happen, and I'm not sure what it is. I'm obviously very hopeful, but I just don't know how it's going to get done, and that's kind of like I guess maybe the scary thing.
I'll disagree with you that it'll drive people away just because there is nothing else right now.
I think that's true, and I want to clarify real quick. When I say people drive away, it will not so much as like not make them watch, but it will make them more vocal about what they don't like. They'll be like, hate watching football, So rather than saying like, oh, I'm so happy that I have something to watch to take my mind, I'm happy that some kind of sport is back. What it'll come down to is they will watch it, but it'll be very reluctant. It'll be like, this is not what I want. This is not the NFL. This is like COVID NFL. And
interesting.
That's what's going to be driven up. That kind of rhetoric, that kind of like distaste.
I think the only way they can continue, literally, is like I said, is if they all decide to essentially go into like an echo. You can't do it until there's a vaccine. And now we're just going off the rails. We're talking COVID, not football. But until there's a vaccine, like there's no other way of having society continue unless, particularly the West, just decides to adopt a different attitude towards death. Like if you just say like, like some people are just gonna have to die and like sound like an absolute bastard. If you don't say that, then you all have to say that you're just going to agree to stay inside until February next year.
Yeah, that's a lot to ask of a lot of people.
And I mean, like at that point, you can do this for a couple months, but after a while, like fuel and like supply chains eventually start.
Yeah.
Right now, the recession was just started. If you do this for 6 months, in the first 3 weeks, 10 million Americans or 10% of America went unemployed. What are you going to do? It goes on a month, 2 or 3 months.
Hopefully you have someone smart at the wheel. That's what you hope.
Well, yeah, that's not going to happen either.
Hey, man, 45% of people think he's doing a bang-up job.
Exactly. So, and, like, pretext. I mean, now we're just off the rails for the podcast, but this is the perfect pretext to cancel election.
Yeah.
You guys should be really careful.
So we don't want to derail everything too bad, but yeah. I think what this does is it just adds a lot of concern and confusion, because I don't know if you guys have seen it, but other sports have tried to do it. And I think what's interesting is there's two ways that sports leagues have tried to handle this situation. So you have some leagues like MLB and NHL and racing where they're trying to put their athletes in virtual situations. So rather than like provide them a true authentic experience, of saying like, hey, we're going to do a virtual thing, it's going to be fun, it's going to be like just an opportunity to see your stars that you love and you want to see. I think what the issue is that they're putting people that don't know how to handle that kind of spotlight, and I think that's kind of like the problem. People are so quick to try and provide a alternate solution, they haven't really thought all the way through of how things could go wrong because they just don't have that experience. There's a really interesting story about a guy named Carl Larson. He's a former NASCAR driver. He got fired because he dropped the hard R on a stream, and yeah, like even though it wasn't necessarily a full-on NASCAR event, his sponsors dropped him, and his driving company just had to let him go. So,
what's the hard? Wait, hard.
He said the N word.
Oh, the N word. I see.
Yeah, the hard R.
The hard R.
I see. Okay, I didn't know it was called that. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So made the like a 13-year-old kid playing Call of Duty.
Yeah, very very casual. It was not. He wasn't calling a person that. He was just like trying to get someone's attention, and they didn't respond. So he said, "Hey, N word."
How is that even in your vocabulary?
That's the situation. So again, the point I'm trying to say is, I think leagues are trying to be creative, but the problem is they don't have the experience. This is just so far outside of their wheelhouse. We're gonna see like these kind of things happen, and it's gonna be a lot of learning moments for everybody.
Dude.
And I never thought we would be here. I never thought in my wildest imagination that this would be something that we would see.
I feel so dumb because I wrote about this anyway. I wrote something last August for a client talking about like a pandemic would sort of lay bare the weaknesses in general in the West, but particularly the U.S. politics at the moment. But I was just writing. Like I didn't mean I wanted to be in the situation 8 months later.
Nostradamus over here.
It's so bad.
Tommy, yes, we're not surprised, but you'd hope they'd be better. Tommy chiming in on the chat.
What's up, Tommy?
We're going to have a lot more chance to talk about it. We have podcasts scheduled for the pre-draft and the post-draft, so we're going to talk a lot more stuff. Final thoughts on the impact of COVID-19, because we're going to talk about how it's going to impact the draft next week, but final thoughts right now.
Yeah, today is Jackie Robinson Day. Today is the day that all the baseball players will be wearing number 42. Worth mentioning, in my opinion.
Thank you for bringing that up. I don't really have anything else to add, but man, it's a weird disease, man, and it's hard to know exactly.
Yeah,
I thought that one pastor had used the wind of God to kill it. What happened?
One of them died.
That didn't work?
Too many sinners.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. We got some predictions for you. These are going to be a little bit more unique. So, Ross, I'm going to hit you off first. Real quick, Tommy says, "My thoughts overblown. Let's get back to it."
Yes.
Tommy, I'm
yeah.
more than happy to let you take the lead on that. Let me know how it goes. Ross, prediction number 1, over under. Of the 16 free agents that the Seahawks sign, over under are 10 going to be on the opening day roster whenever that is?
Hold on a second. Let me look at the list. Give me a second. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, 10 over.
Okay. Tommy says 8. He's giving us under. He's giving us half of them are going to sign up.
I'll take the under on this one as well.
I'm going to say over. I think that if we end up having a 2020 season, a lot of those guys fill a need and fill a hole. I think they want to see them play. Ross, over under. Clowney, wherever he signs, is it going to be over $17.5 million a year?
Under.
Under? Zan,
Yep,
what about you?
I'll go under as well.
I'm thinking I'm going to call a push. I think it's going to be right at this mark. I think this is kind of like the lowest that he will reasonably take. I think he'll take a 1-year deal over a multi-million-dollar deal to try and get at least that much money.
I feel so validated by this. At the end of last season, I remember I was saying in the podcast, I just feel frustrated that people are talking 20 to 25 million, and he had 3 sacks. Like, I get that's not the end-all be-all, but still, like, who's going to give 25 to someone who got 3 sacks? And like
Rostradamus.
Do you remember? Like, I was just like, I don't get it. I accepted I was going to get it, but I was really frustrated about it. So I'm glad like GMs kind of came around on that.
Well, I think we were all in agreement that someone was going to give it to him, but it wasn't going to be the Seahawks.
Right. So the fact that we're still in it's kind of thing. Although people are saying that we have no chance, but I think we have a chance.
I'm with you. I think we have a chance, and you bring up a great point that Britt might be the
Brit
money
is our
that we free
man.
up just to get him. So that's a thought I never even thought about, but that's something I'm really, really bought into.
I think not having a chance is, in fact, our chance.
There you go.
Ross, over under 1,000 tweets about when Clowney will sign in the next week on Twitter.
It's gonna be over.
On your feed, probably yes. Zeb, what about you?
Yeah, it's over right now.
Yeah, I think there's been about 1,000 tweets in the last minute. Are we going to see Ross over under 30 sacks by this 2020 defense? We had 28 last year.
If we play a 16-game season, we have Bruce Irvin. We'll go over. Not tremendously over, but we'll go over.
Yeah, I'm feeling positive about it. I'm going to go over as well.
Tommy says under. I'm going to go over as well. Benson Mayowa and Bruce Irvin combined had like 14 sacks last year. So,
and that's with Mayowa not really playing in the second half of the season when like Max Crosby came in and then sort of fulfilled his potential.
So
right?
I'm excited about that.
What if Collier?
LJ Collier?
What if that dude just like shows up this year?
Be nice.
We might get 24 sacks. All right, last prediction for the day, Ross. Over under. Last year we gave up 48 sacks. Over under 44.5 sacks given up by the 2020 offensive line.
Again, assuming 16-game season. Man, I gotta say under because otherwise, what are we doing? But I sort of feel like it's over. I'm gonna say under. Under.
Yeah, I'm feeling positive. I'm going to say under as well.
Can you document on the website later, man? So I can go back and be like, you told me so.
Tommy's giving us a push. He's going to say that Russ is going to get sacked 44.5 times. So that is a potential opportunity. I'm going to say it's over. Russ and the offensive lines we have, they get sacked a ton. Russ is just one of his things is he'd rather take a sack than throw the ball away. So I'm going to say it's just going to be over. But that's just who he is. Can't be helped.
Wait, did Zeb say over?
Zeb said under.
I said under.
Yeah.
All right.
The winds of God are going to keep it under.
But gentlemen, that is this edition of the Hawkscast podcast. Shout-outs.
Shout-outs to the first responders and doctors and medical people and the Amazon delivery.
Very nice.
Oh yeah! Shout-outs to my roommates who are both working from home, and I assume we'll be able to pay the rent, assuming that I run out of money.
Go roommate.
Yeah. I want to give a special shout out to the fine first responders, teachers, delivery people, all the people that are helping out. Shout out to the people that make the internet work, because if we didn't have the internet, I wouldn't know what I would do. I'm excited that football is back, even in this limited form that we get to talk about it. Hopefully we'll get to talk about it more. Podcast next week for the pre-draft, podcast the following week for the post-draft. Draft is happening. We're talking about it. We're the Hawkscast podcast. I am Sam, they are Zeb and Ross, and go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Thanks.